Hello, hello, hello. We got the Rainy Tuesdays podcast with our usual crew. I'm Adam. We got Margot,
Hi.
Ryan,
Hello.
and special guest once again, Yoana.
Hello.
And this one is special. It's our 50th episode. So,
Woo.
Woo.
so how is everybody?
Pretty good.
I'm good. Yeah.
Don't like
I get
daylight
to be-
savings.
Yes,
Not
daylight
at
savings
all.
is rough.
Yeah. I'm like so tired, honestly. Oh my gosh. It is kind of nice though because I feel like in the morning it's awful because you're like, wait, I like 100% don't want to be awake. But then at nighttime you're like, man, I'm killing it. Like I'm not even a little bit tired.
It's always
I-
not what you want it. It's like, oh, I'm waking up exhausted, and then I wake up fully at like 11. It's like, this is not helpful.
It is nice to get more daytime though.
It is. Like, I was looking outside because normally at like 6:30 it gets dark here. And then at 6 o'clock I was like, oh, there's still sunlight. How nice. I
That was
like being able to see when I go to dinner.
It is nice.
Ugh, I always like have my window open while it's light out. And so it's, I got to have it open for longer today. And I was like, wow, the sun.
Well, our topic of the day, if we're going to jump right into it, is mythical creatures. We have all done research. This is maybe the second or third time I've ever done any work in preparation for this podcast. So someone can start. We didn't plan that at all. But if anyone's pining and really jumping at the gun, ready to go.
I know. I like how we're like putting production value into this finally. Like last week I had to get a whiteboard.
I
Yeah, a
know.
whiteboard. This time I have notes. Oh my gosh.
Guys, it's a
What
real
is this coming to? Speaking of being a real podcast, we have a video podcast that you can look up at Rainy Tuesdays podcast on YouTube. And we also have an Instagram account that I don't believe has ever been mentioned, but it does exist.
It does.
I don't know what's on there because I don't do any work for this, but
I think it's like a picture of our logo, a picture of us, and a picture of us because I think I did it the last time Yoana was on.
oh, nice.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
feel free to follow that, interact with us. That'd be sweet.
Maybe we'd use it more. Oh my gosh. Alrighty, I can start if you want.
Go
Sure.
for it.
Okay, so I'll start with an apology to Yoana because she wanted me to do mermaids and I didn't.
Very disappointed.
I'm really sorry, but I did start research for mermaids that I can send you at some point. It's just that I didn't think it would be interesting enough because every path led to manatees. It was just like essentially people saw a manatee and they were like, "Yep, that's a pretty lady."
Really lusting off these sea cows.
Yes.
Christopher Columbus, like, the humanity and was like a siren. Very
Yes.
nice.
That was one of the things mentioned. It was weird. Alrighty, but so I did dragons, which are pretty exciting because they're very present in like every single culture, but very different in every single culture too. So I'll get into that in a little bit, but also this is something that I didn't really realize. They were originally seen as like lucky creatures and really protective creatures and like in a generally good light. But then as soon as like Christianity spread throughout the world,
Aw,
they
those
started-
Christians.
yeah, Christians hate dragons. It's what I've learned from my research. Because they took on like a really sinister role because they were like seen as being associated with Satan. And so that's kind of sad. Anyway. All right, so why are they a thing? I have found that like typically people were like, yo, there's some dinosaur bones, and they just kind of assumed that they were dragons. Because it's like a fair assumption, right? Because you see these like ginormous bones that are bigger than a person standing, and you're just like, yeah, that has to be something really, really super big. But if you look at the actual body of dragons, in most depictions, it would not suggest that they would look like dinosaurs. But we'll get into that in a little bit. So just put a pin in that. And then another theory is that they are like the perfect combination of primate fears. And that, uh,
Interesting.
yeah, this one I loved. So this is actually like a theory that has been around for a really, really long time. It started with Wang Fu, who's an ancient Chinese philosopher. Um, and basically, he's like, way back in the chain, you've got monkeys. And monkeys are afraid of snakes, eagles, and big cats because those are like their big predators.
Sure.
And so dragons are scaly like snakes. They've got wings like eagles, and then they have jaws and claws that would be like of a big cat.
Yeah.
And so it's like, yeah, they're super scary. And so
The ultimate combination of every terrifying animal trait.
exactly. And so it's like it's thought that like with the combination of people seeing these giant bones and then like thinking of what could possibly like make this or be this scary, they just picked all of the scariest things and they were like, yeah, dragon.
I like that. It explains the wings too, because I was like, for the bone theory makes a lot of sense, but you still see some wings. I mean, I guess there's some dinosaurs with wings, but they wouldn't fit the overall dragon shape.
Right.
But that makes sense then.
Yeah.
They just added in later. They're like, this would be scary, so that's what it's got to be.
They were
Yeah.
like, it'd be scary on its own, but it'd be scarier if it flew. Yeah. So then I was looking into like, could they have ever existed? Because quite frankly, I feel like dragons are one of like the most likely mythical creatures to have existed.
In some form, at least.
Right. Also, we've got kimono dragons, so like they exist.
Yeah.
But okay, so back to their anatomy. You have Greek and Chinese depictions, which show them as like really long, skinny bodies with small or no legs, which sounds like a snake. And so basically, I was like looking into the evolutionary like track of snakes, and snakes had legs, which is weird because that's not a thing you think about. But they were like they evolved from burrowing lizards.
Oh.
Yeah, and so also like while I was looking at this, if you look at like the underbelly of a snake, some of them like have little like lines like that looks kind of I guess like a rib cage almost, but it's like where their legs would have like come out, but they just don't have legs anymore.
Oh, I've heard
Um,
about that.
yeah. So basically, I'm just saying that this could have been a dragon. Um, but basically, that imagery fits really well, especially with the Greek one of earth dragons, which are not ones that like fly. So that's a bit awkward, but I'll get into that. You've got European depictions, which are the ones with like the big leathery wings and like basically the typical thing you think of when you imagine a dragon.
The air
Classics.
dragons.
Yes, the air dragon. And so like initially I was like, well, that sounds like a bird, right? Because birds have wings. And so if you look at the wings of a bird though, something as large as a dragon like simply couldn't fly with the type of wings. And this is due to physics, and I don't understand it. And I read like 3 different articles about how that is a thing, and I still don't understand it. It's something to do with the amount of bones in the wings and how they shape, because it's like a 6 versus 4 thing, and like that's changed in evolution. Science. I don't understand it. But essentially, all you need to know, big things, harder to fly with because they're heavy.
Did you guys, this is a side note, but kind of off that, because as a kid, I looked into whether humans could fly, because I had read the Maximum Ride series. I don't know if you guys have read that or at least know what it is.
Mhm.
But in the book, they're like kids and they have wings and they can fly. So I like was interested in that of like, oh, what could humans theoretically fly if they have wings? And it's that exact same thing of like, nope, it's got some crazy physics function, and humans don't have it, and it requires a lot.
Yeah, and so the difference between that is you either get arms or wings.
You get one or
And
the other, not both.
yeah, because like wings can't do what arms do, and arms can't do what wings do, just because of the way that like bones work. But yeah, so if you look though back to dinosaurs, because birds were kind of a non-starter, um, there was one that was called a pterosaur, which are terrifying. If you look at pictures of them, it's Pterosaurus. They're horrific. Basically, they stood as tall as giraffes and they could fly. Um,
Oh,
and
dang.
yeah,
They're quite large.
They look
they're
like
scary.
big swans. Yeah, holy
Yeah.
cow.
And so they did though have like a really, really specific adaptation that was required to make them like able to exist. And that included a hollow skeleton to minimize weight, and then really, really like sturdy and ginormous upper arm bones. So just like upper arm bones, because that would help them like anchor their like flight muscles, which is more physics that I don't understand, but just trust science. So my thought, right, is it's like if you could have some sort of combination of this, right? You could get a hollow skeleton and like massive arm upper muscles, um, and then combine that with the sneaky bit, you're on your way to a dinosaur.
uh, a build a dragon machine.
Exactly. So that brings me to could they exist? Because did they? Maybe. We'll never know. But could they?
I
This
was,
is what we've got to
yeah.
figure out.
I was
Maybe.
thinking with the wings, because like a hummingbird like flaps its wings really fast, which that's the big thing because we don't think they could exist because no like giant bird flaps its wings as fast as a hummingbird. We think the reason that is because like the hummingbird is small, so it's able to do that. But I mean, there could be like a dragon that like has wings like a hummingbird, maybe.
This is true. This
Could
could
be.
happen. And there's also like a lot of depictions. Typically, the earth dragons do have like smaller wings. And so like maybe that could be a thing. But essentially, what I came up with is that I feel like their body shape and the wings could exist with certain like adaptations, right? The only thing that I like couldn't figure out was fire breathing. So I read some like myths about dragons. And quite frankly, I know that every depiction of a fire breathing dragon has them breathing fire in like a picture, right? But if you read about them from like ancient myths, right? It's typically something like um I don't know, like they use phrasing like burning and like
I was gonna hijack your explanation briefly. I know a lot of mythological dragons breathe acid instead.
yes.
Or
And
venom,
that's like
yeah.
that burning acid or venom or something like that, which is a very real thing that things do. So
Yes, and that's my thing is I'm like if they don't have to breathe fire, then we've already got fire breathing things, right? I think fire breathing is just a terminology. Cuz you can
anything's fire if you want it
yeah,
to be.
you think about it hard enough or too little. But it's got you've got like different things like you also have like fire ants that people would describe their bite as like this burning sensation and everything that like has a very similar thing. So it doesn't even need to be like spitting out acid, which is a thing in some animals. It could also just be like their bite, which was a common myth about kimono dragons early on. Um, is that people thought that their like mouths were so like dirty that like if you got bit by one, like the amount of bacteria would like leave like this really burning sensation.
Hmm.
That's not true. hashtag justice for kimono dragons, but there it's, a fun little theory. But also, you have to think about like the intellect of them, because in all of these myths, dragons are like really cunning, like they're super smart creatures. Um, and so it's been found that like reptiles can be like super super smart. The things that they've been found to do include complex problem solving, reversal learning, social learning, complex sociality, tool use, and individual recognition, which is pretty exciting. And all things a dragon could use. And then also, as far as the gold thing goes, crows.
That's true.
Yeah.
Final argument, crows. It's just that you can like see tons and tons of examples, mostly in birds, but also with some other creatures, mostly like rodents, that they do like shiny things. So, quite frankly, I think dragons are real.
Could be.
Or at least, yeah, could be.
It's like one of those things, and I don't know if you guys all touched on this, but I definitely did when I was researching my creature. Of like, always interested in me of what could have birthed the myth and what was the inspiration for it. And I feel like for dragons, there could have certainly been some kind of larger reptile creature that spits acid or something that
Yeah.
inspired all these things, especially since almost every culture has a dragon type creature. So there must be something.
I I think honestly, like it's really, really likely that the earth dragons at least existed, just because like the snake thing, because there's so many like bodies of snakes, like basically snakes with legs that were ginormous. Like,
Hmm.
um, and I mean, they're still really big snakes, but like bigger than that. And so it's like, I don't know. I feel like someone could see that and be like, yeah, that's a dragon, and then just go on with their day.
I think it's like, as Adam brought up, like how all of these like cultures have an idea of a dragon. But I also think what's interesting too is like the different variations, because I know in like Asian countries and like specifically China, they're not dragons aren't like fire breathers or venom breathers. They shoot water out, which is
Yeah.
interesting.
Absolutely. So, I don't know. I feel pretty good about it.
Yeah.
I
I
feel
feel
like
like they should. I feel like they should hide in volcanoes. Like
That'd
that's just a theory, no scientific backing,
But
but like the lava or
Yeah.
it's the dragons. And who's
And-
gonna go inside a volcano to like look for a dragon? The
Yeah, I
perfect
was-
hiding place.
I'd say, have we checked volcanoes? Have we like looking into the lava? I don't think so. Based off no facts, I'm
Hmm.
maybe there's dragons there. Who's to say?
Yeah.
honestly, pretty sure dragons
Someone
are.
should get on that.
Did you guys ever watch the show Dragon Tales?
Yeah, I was singing the tune in my head this entire time. I just don't want to.
This is completely unrelated, but I was just thinking
What a
about
good
that.
show.
Hmm.
Who was your favorite?
I don't really remember any of the names.
I
don't
definitely
remember.
watched the show. I don't remember a thing about it.
Interesting.
Couldn't tell you any character, any plot, nothing. But I do remember I saw it.
I'm looking up the characters right now.
I don't remember their names, but I liked the twins.
Ooh, I like
They
the
were
pink one.
Oh, the pink one was fun. She was cute. Yeah. Good stuff. Ugh.
I would always try to like memorize the thing in case I ever found like a rock like that. So I was like, I gotta be ready. Like if I
Prepared.
ever find a rock, I need to know this entire little chant song.
Absolutely. I feel like my sister and I definitely had it like down at some point.
I thought I knew one of them, but I realized it was just the Teletubbies.
Oh,
I know
Very
all the
similar
Teletubby
things.
names, yeah.
Oh my god.
So I covered a lot about sea monsters, and I'm just gonna skim a little bit. But I think, sort of like what Margot talked about, it's interesting of how we have this idea of like every culture has this idea of sea monsters. And so what I did is I researched like each continent and then just picked one I thought was interesting. But I also, one of the things I first did was just look back at, like, sea monsters have been around for a while, which I think is interesting. Of, like, even in, like, early Greek stories, like, Hercules fought the Hydra, which is, like, the form of a sea monster. And, like, Odysseus, he fought, like, tons of sea monsters. And those could have been, like, real things, or, like, maybe things they, like, didn't realize. But they were around. So these stories have been told for generations. But even as early as, like, the 1500s, 1600s, 1700s, there are still sea monsters on maps, which is pretty crazy. So I think it's just interesting how many of these creatures have survived or could have survived, but maybe these creatures are just hiding in the ocean. So
This is
something to think about.
a side note about the map thing. That's something I've always loved because I just love the idea that someone was like, "Hey, I saw this like giant little snaky sea thing in the sea there," and it was like, it's got to still be exactly there, right,
Mhm.
guys? Like, I just like the idea that they were like, He'll just stay."
Yeah. It's interesting. I read a lot of like early accounts. Like, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Pliny the Elder.
Yes.
He's
Yep.
a Roman dude. He's
What
famous
a
for
guy.
like claiming that Jesus was living during like his time, which that's the one
Crazy dude.
Christians like him for.
Yeah.
But he also talked about mermaids, and he was like, "Hey, look, there are mermaids who look like hot ladies," and there's like a whole part on that, and it's very interesting.
That's
Um, but I also read one about a guy who was the Bishop of Greenland, and Christians never lie. That would be unheard of.
Never.
Um, but he talked about how like a kraken was attacking his ship once, but it was saved him because he believed in Jesus. So
makes sense.
That
if yeah,
that Kraken was just a priest, and he was like, "I'm testing you."
I do really, really love religion's impact on mythology, you know?
hmm
Like, I feel like it's a really cool cross.
exactly. So I have a lot of continents. So if you guys just want to name a continent, I will tell you about a sea monster.
Alrighty.
South America.
South America? Okay. This one is the Yakuma, which is like a giant serpent that lives in the rainforest but like lives in the river. And the Yakuma just a lot of these like serpents, they like don't really do damage. What they do is like because they're like so big and they move, they like control the waves. So like anywhere in its path it just like leaves a whirlpool and like sucks people in, sort of like a hurricane. And so to protect themselves, like the natives would blow on like a conch horn before entering the water because it believed that like the Yakuma would present itself if it heard the horn, and it's just pretty cool.
There. What about Africa?
Africa, the African one is interesting because this is probably the most realistic. It's called the. So I'm gonna butcher a lot of these names because I am a
Fair
white
enough.
man who only knows English.
Fair.
The Kabali is a giant, like, it almost looks like a giant crocodile, except it's like 40 feet long and has like almost like horse like legs. Um, and this one like lives in rainforests and rivers. Not a lot is known about it because a lot of like early African history is lost, and a lot of it is just through oral storytelling. But what's interesting about this one is like uh, the reports of this are found on like Western Africa, like northwestern Africa, and dinosaurs found there look almost exactly like the descriptions of this. So maybe like one survived all the ice ages and could have just been living in Africa this whole time.
That's exciting.
I like that idea.
Yeah.
Asia.
Asia. Okay, so this one is like the creepiest. It's like from Japanese folklore. It's called the Umabozu, also known as the Sea Priest. It is like this like black figure, like pure black figure that appears only at nighttime, and it has white glowing eyes. And like you should look up some of the artwork of it because it's really creepy. But essentially, like this creature would come up and like calm water would just get really turbulent and would appear, and the only way to like get out of it, because it will like literally tear the ship in two with its hands, the only way to get out of it is to present it with a barrel that doesn't have a bottom, because then it will try to fill the barrel with water, and you can distract it and get away.
That's terrifying looking.
It's
Will
really
say.
creepy. It's like the
Yeah,
stuff
I
of
just looked up.
creepypastas.
Also, my favorite part of mythology is when they come up with like really unique and weird ways to get rid of monsters. Like there's the I don't know if Yoana will talk about this, but I think for vampires, there's the like you have to spill rice in front of them because they're compelled to like count each individual rice. But just a fun little like this is a random thing. I don't know where you came up with it.
Mm-hmm. The North American one is I just went away from like the regular ones. Like I think there's one in Virginia that's like sort of like Nessie, but like I was like
Is it
that's not
Champ?
interesting. Um, so I did like Native American ones, and there's one called Ogopogo, which is
Okay.
fun to say. And it lives in Canada in the Okanagan Lake, and it's like this giant 40 feet serpent. Um, and the natives would like give animal sacrifices before crossing the lake in order to like appease Ogopogo.
Oh, jeez.
And there's also an island in the middle that they're like that they all avoid because they're like that's where it lives. And to this day, that island is like you can't go on the island. So
Oh, I like that.
yeah,
That's
okay. I'll do Europe. So Europe is the Kraken. So like giant squid myths are very prevalent in Europe for some reason. I don't know why, but oftentimes like Kraken is like the big myth comes from the Norse word kraki. So mainly from Europe, it's like very Scandinavian as these myths. So a lot of these reports are like around Britain, Iceland, and Norway. And
speaking of-
another bishop, these Christians, named Eric Potopidin, described the Kraken as a large creature that he described to look like an island. It was that big. However, he also described that normally Krakens just like live on the seafloor and don't like attack ships. But that like because it was an island, it would just fall, therefore creating like a whirlpool.
Do you think that it was just like a really, really big squid?
It could have been. So like there are like giant squids that can actually be up to 40 feet long,
Yeah.
and like people will find them on beaches because like they'll just wash up on the shore. And it's like it could have been that.
That's fair. I always wonder about that. Also, side note about the Kraken, I just watched the third Pirates movie this past weekend. Oh boy. Good stuff. Anyway, what about Australia?
Australia. So this one is actually from New Zealand. It's called the Taniwha. It's this. It comes from Maori mythology. It lives in like rivers, caves, and the sea, and its appearance is that of like a like rainbow shark. So it's pretty cool. But unlike all these other creatures, where like it's sort of dangerous, this one it can be both a guardian and a threat. The Taniwha mainly serves to protect the people of New Zealand, and also with this creature, it can be both male and female, so pretty progressive.
There we go.
And there's all sorts of stories like of the Taniwha like having relations with humans, which is cool. Very sort of like similar to
We're
Greek stories.
really into that monster.
Yeah. And one who interacts with a Taniwha can actually turn into a Taniwha at death and like sort of have a second life, which is cool.
Oh, interesting.
And this belief is like very prevalent still among the Maori people, because in 2000 New Zealand's government wanted to build a highway among like northern New Zealand, but the Maori people banded together and actually got the highway moved because it was believed that there was a Taniwha grounds, like a holy ground around there, so they were able to like reroute a highway, which is neat.
Nice.
I like it.
And that's all I had. But I think what's interesting about it is mainly with like the Kraken is like I think it's probably a giant squid, because giant squids exist and they can like really be anywhere. And part of it I think too is like whales. Whales are big, and also whales attack boats, sort of like Moby Dick.
Speaking of, I
Yeah.
was gonna hijack to talk about in the Byzantine Empire under Emperor Justinian, his historian wrote about this whale called Porphyrius, which was said to be attacking ships during shipping lanes and was like this massive problem that had to be addressed. I don't know how real that is, but awesome. If they're like, what's on the agenda today? Oh, we got that whale again, destroyed another ship, better go hunt it.
Mhm.
Love it.
I love the idea that there's just one whale that's like kind of a dick to humans.
Yeah, and like so much of a dick that they named it and they're like, we really got to deal with this thing.
Yeah.
We keep seeing it and it keeps on destroying ships.
Yeah. So like I saw a lot of theories about like some scientists believe it's just whales, like even like smaller whales will like swim in packs. And so like if you see like 4 whales in a pack like moving in like sync, you could think like, oh, you know, maybe it's like something bigger because like ocean's sort of hard to see in sometimes. Other people, some other scientists theorize like maybe these creatures did exist, but just due to human activity and like pollution and warming of the ocean, maybe they moved to like the deeper ocean where it's cooler, or they could have just been extinct. But maybe they're just hiding out.
All in all, this is why I'm terrified of the ocean.
Yeah. Because one of the things with hiding out is like giant squids, we didn't actually know they really existed back until 2012. And yeah, I mean, that's a big thing. And also the idea that we've only explored about 5% of our ocean.
No.
Who knows what else is out there? Yeah. Mermaids are out there. Just waiting.
I think so.
You gotta say your theory for mermaids, Yoana.
Alright, my mermaid theory. I think that you guys know how there's like a certain level where like we can't handle the pressure, so we can't go there. However, mermaids can, and that's where they're hiding out. And then like those like findings of like mermaid remains, that's because they like go up, and they like can't handle that like lower level of pressure, so they wash up. Also, it would just be cool to have mermaids.
It would be.
Yeah.
Oh, that one movie I think it was called The 13th Year, or like the guy turned into a mermaid. You guys ever see that?
Oh my god, wait,
yeah.
no, I totally did see
I actually
that.
have seen that. I don't know why I have.
I remember I was like 12 and watching it, and I was like, one more year and I'll find out. Like, I'm so close.
That movie slaps. That was such a good movie.
I'm still waiting on like my mermaid transformation, but
Yeah.
we're waiting.
Wasn't his like mom a mermaid? And so he like
I think he was like adopted, and then like his like he had his mermaid mother.
right. Yeah.
Wasn't his like dad a ship captain though?
Something like that. So because he was half human, half mermaid. And so when he turned 13 is when he started being like, oh, I'm also part mermaid. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the extinction theory about a lot of these things is pretty interesting because, like, back in the 1400s, like, if you look at global temperature, which is interesting, I'm in a class about this right now, but, like, global temperature was, like, slowly declining until the 1400s, where it took, like, a huge drop. Because what happened is like a ton of people died during that because you had like the Black Plague, you had 75% of the population in North America getting like wiped out, and like tons of animals just disappearing. So who knows? Could be mythical creatures.
Maybe.
Could be like the megalodon, where it just like got so big that there was not enough food to feed it.
Yeah.
I don't know, so like there's the whole thing that we don't actually know how dinosaurs looked, right? Because like skeletons are not a super accurate depiction.
Yeah.
So like I always wonder about like stuff like sea creatures or like dragons or stuff like where you hear like ancient stories about it, where it's like I wonder if it's just that kind of thing where they went extinct and we just think that they're something else because of their skeleton.
Yeah.
It could be too. There's times of like places they'll be like, oh, do you hear about this crazy creature from all the way over here? And it's a real creature, but they don't know anything about it. So when they describe it, it seems like this wild nonsense thing. So it could be that where you get myths of like a Komodo dragon, a real creature, but by the time it gets to like Greece or something, they're like, whoa, did you hear about this crazy thing? But they have no idea what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's interesting. I know recent like research around dinosaurs came out. Like they found a dinosaur tail like that was captured in resin, and dinosaurs actually were covered in feathers.
Yeah, some of them.
Which,
It's
yeah,
really cool.
They're like, isn't their closest descendant like the ostrich, like its
I
birds?
think it's like
But like,
the chicken. Yeah, like
yeah,
it's kind of funny, and chickens are so unbelievably dumb. So it's
I'm
like,
terrified of chickens.
dude, they're so stupid.
Although that's a we've bred them to be stupid to make it
Yeah,
easier to
maintain.
farm them. That's not like there's a reason the like fighting chicken is a thing. Chicken used to be very smart and very like ferocious, but we bred it out of them.
Yeah, my mom had chickens when she was a child, and she would tell me stories about how it's like if it was raining outside, that they would just kind of like look up at the rain and then drown because they didn't understand that they were like filling themselves with water. Yeah.
I used to have chickens when I was younger. My grandpa would like let them out to run around like the yard, and I would just like sprint full speed, like fear in my heart, adrenaline pumping, because I had a dream that like I was pinned down in the pen and they were like talking to me and like eating me. They
Oh
were
my
like,
god.
"Karma,
Jeez.
this is karma. I'm so scared."
And now Yoana's a vegan.
It's not out of my love for them; it's out of fear.
Oh my god.
I
That's so
was
fun.
I was wondering, like you said, chickens are the closest descendants. Like, what if dinosaurs were like the size of chickens and like really
That'd be
tiny?
Could
But
you
then,
imagine that
yeah,
size T-Rex?
that'd be pretty cute. Though that wouldn't explain the bones.
No.
What if they were just exactly like chickens but giant?
Scary. I feel like anything giant is scary. But no, like also what if their bones are just the like the dinosaur little things that you would put in water when you
Oh
were a kid?
yeah, and they just expand.
Yeah.
That's what I think that is. Yeah.
Oh my god.
One of you guys should go, otherwise we're gonna talk
Yeah,
about
before we get too off the
dinosaur
rails, Joanna,
bones.
do you want to talk about vampires?
Sure. All right. So I thought the whole vampire thing was interesting. So kind of starting off with like Bram Stoker and like Dracula, like it's believed that it was after like Vlad the Third from like the 5th century like Romania area, who like the idea of him being a vampire either came from like his nickname Vlad Tepes, which meant like the Impaler, where it was just like based on his brutal military tactics where he just like impale people to like scare off the enemy and like set an example. Or he was known as Vlad Dracul because he was part of like the Order of the Dragon, which was like this order of like military order to like protect Christian Europe from the Ottoman Empire. So they think it's like a combination of those two, of like his military tactics plus his like dragon thing. But a more interesting theory that I read was that Dracula was most likely like mirrored after this countess who's like the most prolific female murderer. So she like just used to like bathe in the blood of her victims and like killed like over 600 like young girls like ages 10 to 14 because she believed that like their blood kept her youthful. So like she would just like torture them, kill them, and then like bathe in their blood and like drink it. So Dracula was like probably like kind of like from there. But let's see. A lot of like the other stories are just like tuberculosis or like people getting sick and dying, and then like a bunch of their family members also getting sick and dying. So the whole idea was they got sick and then came back and like infected the rest of their families. So we got a lot of info. I'm trying to like
There's a
organize
lot.
it.
I know a little bit about various vampire myths, and I know there's a lot of different origins, and that like really the modern, not to steal it, but it's like a big combination of stuff. You can get into it. I don't want to hijack, but it's
Okay, yeah.
fascinating.
So there was this guy, which they kind of said it's probably like one of the original vampires in Serbia, where he just like mysteriously died, and they were like, okay, that's kind of weird. And like in the following week after his death, like 9 other people died. So they were like, okay, very shady. We're gonna dig his body up. So they dig him up, and everyone's like looking at his body, and they're like, his hair is growing, his nails are growing. He does not look dead at all. So they're like, okay, he's like coming out and killing people at night. So they usually would take his like heart and lungs and burn them, and then like stick a stake through his heart, which a lot of graves were found like that, like from I think the 13th century in Bulgaria, which kind of off topic brings me to the fact that I thought my mom was a vampire when I was younger and was like deathly terrified to go to bed because I was like, she's gonna kill me while I'm asleep. And then I read that there's like vampires in Bulgaria, and I was like, interesting.
Maybe not too crazy of a
Things aren't
belief.
adding up. But the very common practice was like, if they died and like other people died around them, they went to like the original person who died because they were believed to be like the original vampire. So they would like excavate them, like exhume their bodies, take the heart and like their liver and like their lungs, burn that up. Sometimes they would put like a brick or like a rock in their mouth so they couldn't like come back to life and bite people. They would also like take their femur bones and like put them up on their chest and kind of do like the whole skull and bones thing.
Oh, interesting.
Side note: this is why I want to be cremated when I die, because like I don't
Right.
want
I don't want any of
to
this
my
nonsense.
corpse.
I think it would be fun. You know,
Like an art
spice it up
project.
a bit. Yeah. And then they'd like put like iron. It was like an iron just like stake through their hearts, like to believe to like hold them down. So like if they were trying to like wake up in the middle of the night, that they couldn't. But there was also a lot. So that's like more Eastern Europe. Like they were very terrified, and they think it comes from like those practices of like what to do afterwards comes from like pagan practices. But like Eastern Europe, people were definitely like terrified and believed that they were vampires and like did their best to like not get killed by a vampire. Trying to find another one of the stories that I thought was really interesting. Alright, I'll just skip over to the New England thing. I have like a million stories. But
There's
in
a lot
New
to talk
England,
about.
yeah, so New England, this was like early 1800s. This like family had 6 daughters, 5 of which died. So they like obviously went back to the first one, and like 1800s, this is like a while after the whole like European stuff was. So they kind of knew the practice. And like they exhumed her body, like took her heart and like her organs and like burned them. And then like a few days later, one of the other family members that was like so close to death, like miraculously recovered. And they were like, we found it. Like this is it.
We
It
solved
worked.
it.
But yeah. So it's very like interesting because of like this panic of like I think it just comes from like people like not knowing what happens when you die.
Mhm.
And like it's probably just like disease that like contagious disease that like by the time one person dies, like the other person's symptoms kick in.
Right.
So like that's kind of like what I understood.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's interesting to think about, and like them just digging up a whole bunch of bodies and like doing weird stuff and like hoping that it works.
Mm-hmm.
Except like sometimes it doesn't work, and they're like, what's going on?
Something more sinister is at play.
I
Yeah.
always
The
wonder.
usual just desecrating a corpse isn't enough.
Yeah, they're doing a lot of these. Like,
I always.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, like, I always wonder about, like, I think it's really interesting if you look back at like what got women like pinned as witches and stuff. Like, if you think about like the types of things that happen now, especially like in the middle of a pandemic and everything with just death in general, if we didn't know the things we know, like theories like this would probably pop up too. Yeah.
Yeah. There was this like one guy that like died, and then like a bunch of other people who got sick like all reported the same thing, that he like came into their house in the middle of the night and like attacked them. And then his wife said that she also like woke up and he like his like corpse like walked into the house and was like, "Where are my shoes?" And then she was like, "This is spooky. I do not want any more visits from him." So she just like moved, but
A proper response for sure.
Yeah.
but yeah, that was like her whole thing. She was like, he did come back for his shoes, and then she was like, I don't want him visiting me anymore. I'm moving. And then everyone else in the village was like, what? So like possible cures that I read about were like people believe that like this guy said that he got attacked by a vampire. This is like long time ago. He got attacked by a vampire, and so he like took some of the soil and I think he ate it like from the grave of the vampire, and then he like opened up like the body and like put his blood all over himself. But also during the excavation process, this is interesting, at like once they noticed that like their skin was like looking fresh and not like decomposing, and that like their hair was like growing and nails were growing, they would also like examine their mouths and like see fresh blood, and we're like, they were definitely snacking on some people last night. But yeah, even like the Austrian government at a point was like, yeah, there's some vampires here. But that was like, I think the 18th century, where like they like sent this guy to like live there, like in Serbia, and he was like telling the whole story about how he was the one who like survived the vampire attack by like rubbing the dirt and like eating the dirt and rubbing the blood. But then he died, and people were like, oh, that's kind of like shady. But they're like, but it's okay, because he was like, he cured himself from vampirism. But then like 4 other people died, and they're like, never mind, there is no cure, like we're all screwed. And like the Austrian government sent like 2 guys down there to like study like if it's a contagious thing, and they're like, yeah, we have no explanation, vampires for sure.
I also just love the idea of vampires like pretending to be asleep while people are like looking at their corpses.
People are like looking at their mouth.
And they're just like, they don't look at that.
It's like when you're a kid and your parents come in to check on you and you were like on a DS or
Hide the
reading or
DS.
something, and you're like, I'm sleeping, don't look at me.
Just trying to get my 8 hours in.
But also people were like cutting open into their like chest. I feel like that could have been the perfect moment to be like, psych. But another thing that I read was that a lot of like birth defects were considered to be like a sign that like someone was gonna be a vampire. So like in Romania, a 3rd nipple was like, that's kind of suspicious. Or like in Russia, like a lack of cartilage in the nose or like a split lower lip, they're like vampire. So like a bunch of like little things were just like a normal like birth defect. They were like vampires for sure. Only explanation. So let's go into the vampire stereotypes. There's obviously the immortality thing, which I think is kind of cool. I don't know if you guys would like to live forever. I kind of
Absolutely not.
I think it'd be neat, but like I feel like after a while it's like I've done everything.
I'd want the option to kill myself.
For sure.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
I could say like in my current body, relatively, to live forever, but I can die still. I just wouldn't like age or I wouldn't age, I guess. That's really it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So along with like the immortality, they're like stuck in like one age. There's obviously like the feeding off of blood, because that was like considered the life force, which probably originated from the countess who was like bathing in blood to like look youthful. The fear of sunlight is like a big one. Fear of holy objects, because like vampires are seen as like the devil and everything evil. Fear of silver, and the reason for that is because silver is associated with purity. So like obviously goes like anti-vampire. Stake to the heart, like that's like a big one. Invitation only, like for entering your home, like only if they're invited. Which I read a theory was just like kind of to scare kids to like it's like the medieval way of like stranger danger.
Oh yeah. I like that too. That our like monster movies are just their stranger danger lectures.
I do like this idea. Like, there's a scary vampire at your door, and it's like, "I'd like to come in," and you're like, "No," and it's like, "Dang it!"
Spoiled again.
The mirror thing, because like mirrors are a way to like see into your soul. Like they like reveal if you have a soul. So people like look into mirrors and like if they saw the reflection, they're like, okay, good, I have a soul. But vampires don't have a soul, so that's where that stereotype comes from. And then the garlic one was interesting. So in Egypt, it's used as like a healing thing. In a lot of Slavic cultures, it's used to prevent like evil stuff like witchcraft and like sorcery or like from like demonic possession. And like in Asian countries, it was like specifically used for like people to rub garlic all over their bodies to prevent vampire attacks. But like another theory is just that like if vampires have like a super heightened sense like of smell, that like they just hate the smell of it.
Understandable.
And then like the shape-shifting thing with like bats, because like bats have traditionally been associated with like darkness and death and like the supernatural. And like obviously they live in like coffins and crypts and like catacombs during the day. But yeah. Any questions?
What's your favorite like vampire depiction?
My favorite? Like from media? Or The Vampire Diaries seems like it's just they make them look so cool. But I do love the movie Interview with the Vampire.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So whenever I'm like sad, right? I'll watch like really terrible like kids movies because there's just no way to be unhappy while watching one, right? There's one that Nickelodeon did, I think like 2014, 2015-ish maybe. It's called Liar Liar Vampire. And it's all about how this kid like moves to this new town and everyone thinks that he's a vampire because it's like at the height of the Twilight craze. And like it all starts because he like this girl was like looking at him like, and then she like turns to her locker mirror and like he bends down to like tie his shoe, and so she doesn't see him in the mirror, but then when she turns back he's like stood back up again. And so she's like, he didn't show up in the mirror, he's a vampire. Yeah. That's the whole story. Great movie.
Did you guys ever watch The Little Vampire? I think it was like on Disney.
No, I remember like seeing things about it though.
I remember seeing The Little Einsteins.
Very similar. Oh god.
I think I remember seeing a Disney Channel vampire movie though.
Yeah. I feel like there was like, oh, My Babysitter's a Vampire.
I was about to say
Yeah.
this is a vampire.
Yeah.
So
that was like right when I started watching.
My
Great
biggest
show.
questions are, do you think there are vampires? And would you ever want to be a vampire, given that like you can kill yourself at some point? Like, what are the pros of being a vampire?
I mean, I don't think vampires as we currently understand them are real. I think there's a lot of like in the whole, I think vampires are a way to explain things like disease, and I think that's their like basis in reality, but I don't think they're real. But I don't know, they're very interesting to talk about. But I also don't think I want to be one. Drinking blood just doesn't seem like a fun time necessarily.
That's fair. I would not want to be one purely because just the thought of drinking blood is enough to make me want to vomit. Like,
it tastes not good.
Have you had blood?
That's what a non-vampire would say.
Oh, have you not ever? You guys have blood in your mouth at some point,
Yeah,
like
or
getting
like,
smacked or something. Like
Yeah.
you've tasted blood, hasn't everyone?
yeah.
I guess
Okay,
I
I'm
have
glad I got
had
some
blood in my
information
mouth.
there.
I guess like with my wisdom teeth, I've never been
Yeah.
punched hard enough like to bleed in my mouth,
You
but
ever
I
like
guess I
bite
just
your lip
played
and like
sports.
cut your lip?
Yeah,
not enough for that. But like I guess with wisdom teeth, but I was on too many painkillers to like make note of the taste.
it
But
doesn't taste good. You can really taste like the irony taste of blood, and it's not good.
I don't
It's,
hate it.
Yeah.
Like,
It's not. There's worse things.
yeah,
that's
Like,
true.
I would say like I don't think vampires are real. Like what Yoana described, like a lot of it has to do with like very much this Christian idea, like these people are
right.
sick, they must be impure, we must treat
Yeah.
them with like silver because they're impure or something. So I think a lot of that is there. I do think vampires are interesting, especially with like the idea of like vampires or like the wealthy people, and they like just suck on the people that aren't as much and just steal from them. I think that's cool. Like if I had the chance to be a vampire, I would do it. I'm really pale. I'm halfway there. So
Not too much of a jump.
exactly, I could do it. I think it'd be fun.
Yeah, I no, I just fundamentally the blood thing is too much for me. But I like most other things, I guess. I don't know.
I think my biggest issue with the blood thing is that it would be like warm. Like
That's
Oh
also gross.
yeah.
I feel like if it was like iron, like like water fountains, sometimes like the water tastes a bit like iron.
hmm
Like I feel like if it's like cold, like then it would like be better than like straight up like hot iron taste.
Then you go to a blood bank, and then like
Right.
they put the blood in like cool stuff. I would assume,
Yeah.
and then you just go there, and that's
There's
where you go to
also
lunch.
gotta be a difference between drinking your own blood and drinking like some other being's blood. And I don't mean like drinking, I mean like whenever it's like in your mouth, like you guys were talking about, like that probably isn't like as gross as I feel like drinking from a blood bag like a Capri Sun would be.
But
Like,
if you're a vampire, you like that taste. Like
Yeah.
your taste bud changes. That's like
yeah.
yum.
Can you eat like regular food? I also do love garlic.
Maybe
That's
that's
true.
just a myth,
Maybe, but what a terrible way to find out.
I guess.
Ugh, fair.
Would hate to give up garlic bread.
Oh,
Oh
absolutely.
no, I've been killed by this pasta.
That would be Adam's biggest night.
Couldn't do it.
What
Alrighty.
if like vampires just don't like cutting? Oh wait, no, that's onions. Never mind. I got onions and garlic confused.
How about you, Adam?
Yeah, I can jump into my topic. Mine's on the shorter side, probably, so which is good because I think we're running low on time. But what was interesting for me was when I was picking a topic are myths that are common for almost all cultures. And so I chose little people myths. Also, fairies kind of fall into that as well. That just a lot of cultures have myths of pretty much humans, but they're pretty tiny and they are often mischievous and will mess with you. And you typically have to do something to appease them, like sacrificing or like leaving offerings of food to them. And they usually live in hills or near rocks. And it's a very consistent theme across cultures that they have these same kind of traits, which is interesting to me of like, how did everyone get the same thing and where did it come from? Um, but I can run through a few examples, and honestly, most of this is examples because a lot of places have them, but they're not too in-depth myths. So it's just like, hey, here's a name, and they're tiny people. What more can you say? Um, Greek mythology has the pygmies, which were just small humans that attacked people, particularly Hercules, because Hercules fought everybody. Um, and as a side note for Greek mythology does this great thing where they're like, here's this mythological tribe of things, and they are in this real world location that we could visit and see that they're not there, but we are not going to bother with that. And they do that all the time.
Yeah.
I also
and
like,
it's
just
just
as a
fun.
quick side note, like you mentioned Hercules liking to fight everyone. I just like imagining Hercules as like a frat dude, just like, yo, you want to fight? Want to
He
fight?
really is.
In the Percy Jackson books, I know Margot's reading it, the second series, but he shows up and he's absolutely just a frat guy.
100%. That's my favorite like take on Hercules anytime because I feel like the Disney movie also did that. Like he's literally just a himbo and it's kind of fun. Anyway.
Well, yeah. A few other examples in a Native American, the Shoshone tribe has the Nimeragar, which were a also little people. They lived in the Rocky Mountains, and these ones are particularly notable because in like the 60s or something, and I don't have this in my notes, so I'm going off of memory, they found a mummified corpse of like a really small person, and they were like, "Oh, proof that these myths are real," and it ended up being an infant with like a deformity or something. But it was this whole like media craze, so I didn't put it in because it ended up being debunked, but it a lot of people believed it at that time.
Fair.
Hawaii has the Menehune, which were just small people who like made structures in the wilderness and would never let humans see them. But they're particularly notable because they were said to be the original inhabitants of the island before the Polynesian people settled it, which also just a parallel of history. People are always conquering other people. And then the real gem for these myths. Oh, well, first, Indonesia has an Ibu Gogo, which little people were said to kidnap children. And I'll come back to that because my real world explanation involves that myth. But the real gem for these kind of creatures are like English, Irish, Scottish, and Norwegish. That's not a word. Lore. Because they pretty much all have different versions. So in Scotland, they have the Trow, which just your basics. Um, Ireland just has a million different versions, and I didn't list them all because I literally just wrote that there's tons, and they're like the prime of super mischievous, will mess up your stuff. You gotta appease them somehow, and if anything goes wrong in your life, it's probably their fault. But particularly, they're the pukas is what their like main one is. But there's a lot, and like if anyone knows anything about various fairies, it's pretty much an Irish myth. And then the Cornish people, which I think are English, I don't actually know where they're from, but they have a creature called a knocker, which particularly mess with miners, and they'd steal their like mining equipment and steal their food and stuff. And what I thought was interesting about them is that they're called knockers because in a mine, when there's a cave in, there'll be a knocking sound before the cave collapses. And they attributed these cave ins to these creatures, and that's why they call them that. But in reality, it's just the earth shifting, and that's what causes that noise.
Mhm. I like that though.
The knockers.
Yeah.
And then in Iceland, they have the Hulda folk, or hidden people, which live in stones or hills, and same kind of jam. But similar to what Ryan said about the Maori people, like hardcore believing in that creature and preventing construction projects because of that. In Iceland, this happens all the time, and there's like people hardcore believe in these like elf creatures, and there's like advocacy groups that halt construction projects because they're like, no, you can't build this thing because these Hulda folk live in that rock and you can't mess with them. And it causes delays all the time because people really, really believe in them. But there have also been stories about construction projects suffering like strange misfortunes and delays of like equipment decaying too fast for what it would be normal or just random malfunctions among machinery. And that's attributed to these mischievous creatures when you're trying to like build a highway through one of their stones and they don't like it. And there have been times where like construction projects have been abandoned because of that. So I don't know. Maybe just unlucky or ran afoul of these elves. One interesting story is the Dover Demon from Massachusetts. This is a little bit more of an alien story, but it also has some semblance of little people. So in Dover, there was this creature, which was kind of what you'd think of with like your basic alien. It was pretty small, like 2 feet, completely gray, with like long, narrow, like really skinny limbs, and like an oval face and bright, really round eyes that glowed. And it was seen by 3 different people at 3 different times in 3 different locations within like a 2 day span. So you could track it of like this one 16-year-old was biking, saw it on a rock, and freaked out. Then this other person saw it in the woods, freaked out. Next day, this like teenage girl was walking back home and it like darted across the street and she freaked out. And they all reported it to the police and no one could find anything. But I don't know, they were just crazy. But they like believe it, and today we'll still tell you. And they all drew like pictures of the exact same thing, even though they didn't know each other.
I think we can all agree aliens exist, right? We're all down for that.
So, do you think aliens exist, or do you think that? Well, okay, I think aliens exist for sure. That I don't think you can argue that. And if you think aliens don't exist, you're wrong. But I don't think they've visited Earth.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I feel like we would know if a like advanced civilization had visited Earth. And you can talk about like government cover-ups or anything, but I feel like something would be.
Someone
It'd
would
be
spill
more
the
than people.
beans
Yeah,
if it was
like,
a government cover-up.
People are very bad at keeping secrets, and I think that's the downfall of conspiracy theories. Are like you can't keep that hushed up. It's just not going to happen.
I wonder, like, I think my thing is I don't know if I'd say like they haven't visited Earth, because I do think that if there are aliens, which I think that there are, I think that they're like 1,000 times more advanced than we are. And so my thing is like if they have visited Earth, there's a solid chance we just don't fucking know, because like they didn't alert anybody, you know, and they're just like checking it out and being like, who are these dumb little like idiots?
That's fair. They're like, oh, these people are so primitive. We're not going to bother. Like, what are they? They're still on nuclear power.
Okay. Yeah.
I can see that of like crazy advanced civilization moving on, like flying in, being like, oh, these people are stupid, and leaving, and then just like alerting everyone else, be like, don't visit Earth, boring.
Like, what if they're like looking at us to see if like we could help them with anything, or if we have like new technology, and they're like, okay, well that's like 3 billion
Lost
years
cause.
ago. Like, yeah.
I like the idea of them having like a reality TV show about us and it being like on like season 2020. And just being like, oh my god, they're so dumb. I can't, like, what do you think's gonna happen next?
They're secretly just filming us.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, I like that idea. That's really funny.
I like that.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, they got the pandemic. Who's gonna survive? Series finale.
Oh my god.
I was gonna say, have you guys ever heard like the theory that like the universe is infinite? So if the universe is infinite, then there's a possibility that there's a solar system, like our solar system, that's exactly the same, except like maybe there's just like one difference. So like maybe instead of me wearing like a red shirt, I'm wearing a blue shirt, and that's the only difference in that like solar system.
I love that.
I heard a theory that maybe the aliens like sent down like a little spaceship, and that's what killed all the dinosaurs. And on that spaceship were Adam and Eve, and that's how. I don't know how much I buy it, but low key.
Isn't that the plot of Battlestar Galactica, where like humans are aliens and they landed here and like forgot about the rest of humanity or something?
I think.
Maybe
I've never seen the show. I don't know anything about it, but I thought that was the plot.
You know, going back to that like Earth reality TV show, I like this idea that like maybe the plot gets boring, so the aliens just like drop like a piece of metal from the sky and are like, hey, see what happens.
Sprinkling some murder hornets. Spice it up a bit.
Oh my god.
They're like, we're really hitting low ratings. We gotta spice things up. But yeah, I can quick round this out. So, from the Dover Demon thing, the the first place it was found on, the first kid who saw it, it was on this rock formation, and that formation was called the Puka Stone, which from the Irish myth.
Mhm.
So I don't know, maybe some people were pretty smart and they knew what was going on. But what was interesting to me were what could be like a real life basis for this. And so that led me down a bit of a rabbit hole about human evolution, and that
Ooh.
there is this old ancestor of humans called Homo floresiensis, which is not at all what it's pronounced, but it's abbreviated to the Flores man because it was found on the island of Flores in Indonesia, and they are colloquially called hobbits, which were a people that were about 3 feet tall, and just that was what they were. But they're pretty up there in human evolution. They probably died out over 100,000 years ago, before modern humans were in that area. So it doesn't seem super likely that they were could spawn some myths, but they were advanced. They had stone tools. Like, I don't know how much of a civilization they could have left, but what was interesting in particular is flashing back to the Indonesian myth. They're in specifically that island of Flores where the skeleton was found. There is a myth of little people, and there's a myth in part of that myth is that the local Indonesian people killed them all after they kidnapped their children. They like firebombed the cave that they lived in and murdered
Dang.
them all. But so harsh. Well, I mean, if you're gonna kidnap your kids, they're gonna fight you back.
We've yet to see
But-
proof of the kidnapped kids, but
You're gonna
That's true.
kidnap our kids? We'll kill yours.
We'll kill your
we'll kill
whole
everyone.
civilization.
If they were like that, like small though, wasn't it kind of like an equal fighting chance between like the children and them? Like,
Yeah, they were just
Yeah.
picking fair fights.
Yeah, maybe. Not the kids' fault; they couldn't handle it.
Yeah. Kids are stupid.
they should have been kidnapped.
Yeah. Where are their neck bones? God.
But yeah, that kind of rounds out all my information. I just thought it was interesting that our actual evidence of prehistoric humans of this size that kind of fits this myth of every civilization, and there is a myth in that same area that these skeletons were found in.
Huh,
So I don't know
yeah.
if they found other skeletons and were like, I don't know, maybe we killed them, who's to say? Or something else, but something inspired all these myths of these very similar creatures. So
Mhm.
I don't know.
That's fair. I like it though. Alrighty.
I
Well,
think
what? Oh,
Yeah.
we can.
I was
What were
just
you
gonna
gonna
say as a closer, like I think the internet has ruined everything. Like, 50 years ago, you could just like get enough people to be like, "Hey, let's say like this thing happened," and it just like is accepted. Like, no further research, just boom.
Are you
All
trying
right,
to
I guess
tell me
that
you
happened.
couldn't do that on the internet.
I guess you could. Never mind.
Start a
But I
Twitter
feel like it's
thread.
easier to disprove it. I mean, yeah, I guess like people are like, oh look, they're putting microchips in vaccines, so
Hey,
Yeah.
you just gotta own a major news network like Fox News, and you're golden.
You
They're
got
putting
it.
like giant like microchips in the masks.
Oh
Um,
my gosh.
if you guys could like make one myth like real, which one are you going with?
Maybe I'm biased, but I'm going with dragons. Just because sea things creep me out because the ocean is scary and I think they're all mean. And then like vampires, they like I'm their prey. Like they could kill me, you know?
Unless you are one.
Unless I am one. That's also a fear. Because I don't want to be one. And then fairies, they're just kind of there to mess up your stuff. Like it seems
That-
like they're
That
mean.
is true. I was gonna say fairies, but then like I was gonna say fairies for honestly that reason of like fairies' whole existence is just like messing with humanity, and we're just gonna make life really hard for us. And I think that's really funny that like a whole species of creatures' entire purpose is just to be like, we're so much better than you that we're just gonna mess your stuff up 24/7. And what are you gonna do about it?
That's so frustrating though. I don't want that. I just want dragons to be like, look at how dumb these little humans are. We gotta protect them, because it would be nice.
Hmm. I was gonna say the opposite. I think vampires would be cool. I really like vampires, but also I think it'd be cool if the Kraken just comes back one day. I think humans have had it too well for a while now, and they need to be put in their place.
Have we?
So
Isn't that what our current pandemic is?
listen,
Not enough.
humans have been at the
too
top.
good.
They've been too mean to nature. I
Leave it
think
up.
Kraken comes back.
Take them down a few pegs.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think they all come back and just destroy us.
I'm down for that.
Godzilla sort of situation.
How about you, Yoana?
Okay, mermaids. I'm
Okay.
bringing that one back. I would love that, but like the nice mermaids.
Mm.
But also, I guess the sirens, like the whole thing of like luring men to their deaths, like kind of neat.
Always a good thing.
Right.
Always, yeah. I think that would be cool.
I like it. Yeah.
I think sirens are like the funniest stories. Like all these guys were just like really bored and like, oh hey, look, there's some women. I'm leaving.
You know how like girls on like Twitter are like, I would literally kill myself to be that pretty. Like men did that on
Mhm.
ships. They were just like, that girl is so hot, I will literally drown. Like, God.
Adam, which one would you prefer?
I kind of like the sea monsters. I think it would be pretty fun if there were just sea monsters wrecking ships occasionally.
Margot's not vibing.
God, it's just, I mean, it's fine because I would never be on a ship. So
Yeah.
like they can just exist and I'll just exist like safely
And
on
we have
land.
planes now, so like it's not much of a
Right.
threat to us. I mean,
Yeah.
some people like ship around,
Yeah.
Right.
but
yeah, like, so they'd be cool and it'd be fun to be like, that's neat because like they'd exist and that's fun because it's cool when things exist. But at the same time, I don't ever want to see one. Alrighty, well,
what rained on y'all's parade? I have a funny one to start off if you
let's
want.
hear it.
So, a lot of people take naps during the day, and I never have, don't understand them. The only time I take naps is if I'm quite sick and I am gonna fall asleep wherever I am, anyways. But my girlfriend visited this weekend, and she does take naps. So she went to take a nap, and I was like, I'll join you. Worst experience. I fell asleep for like 20 minutes, and I don't understand how anyone thinks that naps are helpful. Because I woke up with a splitting headache and was just completely destroyed for the rest of the day. I like woke up exhausted, head pounding, couldn't function. I was like, I don't know how you can be like, this is rejuvenating, because I just wanted to die.
I feel like you're napping wrong.
You gotta go back and like restart another nap.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yikes.
It was rough. I mean, I assume it's because at least the exhaustion part of like, I never nap. So if I fall asleep, my body's like, oh, we're sleeping the full however long I get sleep at night. So we're not prepared to only sleep for 20 minutes. What's that?
You're just like, ha, tricked you. Oh my god. Mine's just anticipatory. But by the time this comes out, it will be officially 2 days until the Snyder Cut is
Yes.
out. I am hype. Let's be clear, I have a lot of midterms this week. However,
Yeah, none of us will be
All I
watching
care
it when
about-
it comes out.
oh, I will be. I don't have classes on
Oh,
Fridays.
okay.
So like all of my
Sure.
midterms will be done by like midday on Thursday. And the moment I finish that last one, oh, I'm sitting down, I'm watching the whole thing start to finish.
I'll have to do that too.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. We should have a watch party where after like every hour we just like check in and go, how you feeling?
There's so much Jesus imagery.
Superman is just God.
And so is Batman, and so is the Joker. It doesn't make
And
any
essentially,
sense.
so is Zack Snyder. Oh my god. How about you guys?
Yeah, I'm just gonna say midterms as well. You know, I've showed you guys this, but this is a Smith chart for video listeners. it looks like a mess. Who knows how to read this thing? But I do, and you can look at chords and figure out like the like resistance and impedance of a chord, and it's cool. But it's a pain in the butt, and it requires a compass. And anything that requires a compass is a little too much work, in my opinion. So.
Fair.
Oh, I had his midterm this week, and I did not like read the book at all at any point. And so I had to like pull an all-nighter and read the entire book so I could like answer the like essay question. But so I ran on my own parade for not reading the book earlier and having to like learn 500 years of like Roman history in one night.
Oh my god.
Yoana, I'm in the same boat. I've put this off so much. Like, I probably should have been paying more attention, and I probably won't learn this lesson next time. I'll probably be in the same position in like a month.
Same.
But yeah,
Hear me out. I either like I saved 2 months of like reading and did it in one day. I feel like that is managing my time well because I spent less time on it.
yeah.
Yeah.
How'd
It
you
makes
do?
sense.
Do you know?
I don't know about that. I feel like you're justifying a bad way of doing things.
Listen, if I get like anything above a C, then this method works. But if I get anything below it, then I probably need to pay more attention.
I got an A. On my
Okay, so
essay.
yeah, it works.
So like, it works, and I
Um,
saved 2 months of time, and just sacrificed one day for it.
That's efficient.
I do want to make note the fact that last time you were on, Yoana, you said that you rained on your parade for having to pull it all night.
It is like I continually rain on my parade for the same reason.
I'm my own worst enemy.
Oh my god.
My resume does say I'm really good at time management, though. So
Right. Oh my gosh. Well.
Well, that's our podcast. Follow us on Instagram, since this is the first time I think we've ever mentioned it.
Yeah.
And watch the video podcast. It exists.
Yeah.
Have a sunny Wednesday.
Have a Sunday Wednesday. Bye.
Bye.
bye.